Hi, welcome to the first in a series of conversations with business, government, and religious leaders worldwide. Appetizers for Success, yes, just small bites, is designed to penetrate the barriers and challenges facing leaders of people, teams, and organizations. Selected topics will come from our own personal and business experiences with clients across the globe.
Yeah, welcome everybody. We're just so excited to start our series of many talks, not just among John and I, but also among people that we know and we have worked with, so they can share their nuggets with you. My name is Marilena Beuses, and I've been in business for, I don't know, way too long. I was in corporate organizations around the world, multinationals, for about 20 years. And then I decided, just like John, we became executive coaches and transformational leadership with, again, a variety of industries and leaders that we have learned a lot from. And that's what we're going to bring to you.
Thank you, Marilena. And my name is John Arnold. I have the same number of years. We won't go into the exact number of years that Marilena possesses in the executive coaching and consulting industries. We've dealt with hundreds of leaders and dozens of organizations around the world, and we're excited to launch the series Appetizers for Success. Marilena will now go into what today's topic is and touch on some of the delicate, maybe even controversial topics and tactics being used by leaders today.
Excellent. So I think today we should take our time and talk about, like what happens in every day, but sometimes we don't see it, which is disruption. I love disruption. I come from a third world country, and we live in an influx of disruption every day. And we're noticing it nowadays even more because we're all affected by this pandemic all over the world, and so many other things happening in different countries. We're both based in the US. So forgive us, sometimes we do a US view, but we will welcome your reactions to our videos and actually, come to us and say, hey, I disagree with that, or I have something else to add. So today is about disruption. So the way I see it, John, and just I'm going to pick in certain topics and we just flow with it. I think one of the major disruptions right now is working remotely. That is changing the patterns upon which companies used to assess, what was the level of productivity that people were having. Before we started the pandemic, we had about 32% of people that were working remotely. Now we're up to 48%, at least in the US. Here we do a lot of statistics. And companies, and talking to some of my clients, are wrestling with the fact of, are they really being engaged? Are they really, punching the clock, so to speak? And because of that, part of the disruption is I've seen an enormous amount of people trying to, or companies trying to expand the data collection that they can get about productivity, or, what are the mechanisms or tools or software that might be out there so that we can regulate how much work are people really doing for us. So I'm going to stop there so you can interject on this disruption.
Yeah, you raise a number of really interesting and powerful topics, Marilena. The remote workforce has probably had the largest impact on our economy, even the global economy. Let's just say that. There are other areas where remote working is impacting businesses. What will happen to the commercial real estate occupied by some of these businesses? A number of my clients have been telling their employees that they probably won't return to the office until sometime in 2021. So what's the impact on the bottom line of that? What's the impact on commercial real estate? Thinking US-wise, with the experts in the commercial real estate field that I've been talking to, it's going to be huge. It's going to be sizable. It's going to have an amazing negative impact on that sector of the economy. But going back to the remote workforce, in conversations that I've had with leaders that I've been coaching, a large percentage of them are saying they actually see a higher level of productivity. Many employees are comfortable working from home. They have started to schedule, not only work from home, but how are they managing their day? The exercise, when they eat, how they're taking care of themselves. And actually they started to discover a more healthy routine than they had when they were sitting in an office or a cubicle. So it's had a very positive impact or effect on a number of the companies I've been working with. The one major negative has been on the mental health side. So
Yes.
for example, many people in the tech world or the engineering community are typically introverts, and they come into the office for the socialization aspect of their life. And now they don't have that. So in the beginning of the pandemic, when work from home was really being launched, many people struggled with higher levels of anxiety because they missed the socialization that they used to experience at work.
Absolutely. So yeah, and this is another part of me that thinks, John, how do we in this disruption, how do our leaders, the leaders that we coach and that we train, how they prepare to let go certain things? For example, number 2 disruption for me is about resetting goals. Obviously, the goals that many companies had, even the ones that had a mid-year, in June or the end of the year in June, are struggling, to make their numbers. So that also affects not only performance for their own system, their own products, but also to reevaluate, how are we gonna maintain our companies alive, the ones that can, because as you know, there's a whole bunch of lists of companies that are filing bankruptcy and people that have small companies, unfortunately, that will not survive. So the ones that do survive, what are they doing to readjust to this new reality in which your clients visit sometimes your establishment, or you have to do more of the distribution channel or create a new distribution channel that you have, from restaurants to retail. Amazon right now is king, as you know, Grubhub and those other ones.
Yeah.
But all these areas is making people think, well, how do I organize my company now? And with that, I'm going to add the third. So I'm going to have 2 and 3 at the same time. You know me.
Of course you do.
Is my clients are really thinking about reviewing what are the critical skills that they need. It's not only bringing people back or creating jobs. It's also what are the critical skills that my company needs for the long haul, and to be prepared. If this is something that's going to last a year, let's say, at least in developed countries, more powerful countries, what are the skills that I'm going to need? And let me give you a little nugget that I heard the other day, and this came from a place that I didn't know, Peru. In Peru, companies, it's a third world country, in Peru, companies are now accepting people with high school diplomas, but with a lot of expertise and experience in something, rather than asking for a bachelor's or master's degree. For me, that's mind-blowing, because I don't hear that very often. So again, I will appreciate your point of view on this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Clearly, you have much more experience in that arena, in the South America and the Latin American arena. I think one of the other challenges will be a talent pool going forward. So, for example, you have Ivy League schools that have announced that they're not going to be doing in-person education, that they'll continue with remote learning. And given what's happening with the 30 or 40 million unemployed people in our country, depending upon what statistics you look at, what's the additional percentage of students graduating, either undergraduate or graduate, that are joining that unemployment pool? I think the quest for really top talent in the U.S. specifically is going to be a real battle, depending upon the particular sector that's looking for talent. The other thing that comes to mind as you talk, and of course you always have one more additional very positive insight and powerful insight, is I wonder, Marilena, if organizations or leaders of organizations will start actively planning for disruption in the future. Obviously the disruption that's happened now was caused by an external factor. And I'm curious, as we begin to interview some of our guests, and we ask them that question, what are you doing now to actively plan for disruption? What does disruption in the workplace within your organization look like in the future? And how will you plan for that?
Well, I want to recommend to you and to anyone that is listening to this, a wonderful, you can either look at it on YouTube or it's a book. It's called The Anticipatory Disruption. Anticipatory Disruption was, it was written by Daniel Burrus. He's a scholar in the US. And I'm going to read here a little bit of, because of course, our memory goes sometimes. But he talks about, we have certainty of nothing in life, except for cycles. Like, for example, you and I have a cycle. The cycle is you are born and you will die. Those are certainties in life that we have no matter what we do.
True.
We have certainty in, for example, the cycles of nature. There is, for certain countries, January will be summer, or will be in the south, or will be in the north will be winter. And we have, some of us are fortunate enough to have deforestation, not in South Florida where we are, but at least we can predict certain things based on nature patterns and all that. So he says that the only thing that you have control is those business cycles that they receive a pattern. But even if you look at the economics right now, economic cycles, it gives us some information, but it's not predictable. So he recommends in his book or his videos, you choose to go there, that in order for us to move forward and do planning, the only thing to avoid what we call disruption and be unsettling is to plan on the certainty that we know. The rest is all like icing on the cake. We can either thrive in that uncertainty or not. The other thing I have learned in my own personal life and when I work with leaders is that planning in excess, it kills your flexibility sometimes for invention, for producing an experimental result that like Apple have done in so many ways. So disruption is not bad at all. I actually will probably think that this disruption is not only going to create planning for a lot of our clients, but planning with a lot of contingency plans and flexibility, different than how you and I have seen it before.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting how you take a look at that. I just had this one thought that jumped out of my head. I have to bring it back somehow. To your point around exhaustion and going into so much detail, I think that's the main difference between organizations that focus on perfection versus excellence. You and I both know, working with leaders for so many years and organizations for so many years, that perfection just, this is a strong term, but kills or can kill an organization. It wears people down, rather than when you're in search of excellence, it gives people the opportunity to really buy into that theory or that strategy, because they're not so focused on getting things perfect. And in the meantime, finding themselves exhausted, their teams are exhausted, and they rarely hit the goal because they're absolutely worn out. So I think you're spot on with your thinking.
Well, the other thing and it's not easy. I'm not saying there is you probably heard of him, Christensen from MIT.
MIT?
Yeah, he created now his book is going to escape to me. But it was also about that, about the innovation, about disruption. But I also wanted to mention to you that there is opportunity in Spanish. We say you fish in murky waters, no? And then you don't know what is there, but there's fish, right? So you learn that. Don't look for the clarity. Don't look for okay, so it's going to be fish here forever. But look for those murky waters. Sometimes you find opportunities. And part of that, and what I've seen, and actually saw it today, Warren Buffett, one of those super billionaires of the world, he made a big investment. And what are they doing? They're buying. So mergers and acquisitions are going to be the way to go right now. People are going to be merging. They're going to be excelling. What is the part of your business that does well than mine? You want to come and play with me? I also see in certain countries, like for example, my own country, Venezuela, a lot of nationalization of companies in third world countries in which they need the external investors. They need the technology. They need a lot of things for them to revamp more quickly. So, yeah, well, everybody has to prepare for that. And I also see a lot of investments in secondary markets. And of course, reorg. Reorg is going to be, the Western, in like the Western movies, right? How do I reorg? Do I reorg by function? Do I reorg by skill? Whatever. It's not a lot of experts, consultants, maybe including us. We're going to come with what is the best way to reorg. And, we just have to be a little bit like, a trial and error period until we figure it out and we all become better out of this.
The other thing that comes to mind as I listen to you talk, Marilena, is the fact that leaders will have to be having different conversations with their teams and down into the organization and across the organization with their people. I think the other thing that will start happening more intently will be organizations and the conversations they have with their clients, their vendors, their suppliers. I can see more active partnership conversations happening with client vendors and suppliers, where in the past it was all about how much can I get for the least amount of money? What can you guarantee that you can deliver in the shortest period of time? So I think based on what everybody's been experiencing these last 4 months will cause people to have more active conversations, two-way conversations, rather than one-way, this is what we demand, this is what we're going to pay for.
Yeah, well, I also think that, communication is key in every aspect of our lives. But there's a lot of listening and a lot of understanding of what the other one is proposing, because listen, there's a lot of people in organizations in which we have coach and train that they have pretty smart people there. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily the people that are sitting at the top, to be honest. So how can we help our leaders to be open to a conversation that doesn't have a script, that doesn't have an agenda, but it just happens, and create an environment so that they can hear those wonderful ideas that sometimes we ignore because we're going so fast, not because they don't want to hear it, but it's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, that's right. As we end our first conversation today, I'm thinking about maybe a potential next conversation around the impact on organizational company culture. So as leaders start to take a look at their culture, what aspects of their culture will they leverage? And what aspects of their culture will they reinvent? Because those aspects of their culture don't serve them anymore, or don't serve their employees or their clients anymore. So that might be fun to explore in the future.
Yeah, no, I welcome that. So let's make that our next topic.
That'll be great. And I think a wonderful call to action for people who listen to us might be, what has your experience been with organizations you've been working in or working with as it relates to how they're handling disruption within their particular business? And we would love for you to give us some feedback, to reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we welcome the perspective that might be similar to us, as well as any controversial or different perspective than we currently have. And we thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. Like always, very insightful.
Friend.
Bye.